Welcome to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller sitting in today with Dr. Brant Ellsworth, Assistant Professor of Interdisciplinary Humanities here at Central Penn College. We're here to talk about something very unique, an initiative that Brant has helped spearhead, and it is the Humanities Film Series that's going to happen quarterly starting on January 26th with Jared Reif and Jaws. So we're going to talk a lot more about that today, but we're also going to talk about Dr. Ellsworth. This is the first time you've ever been on the Nightly News Podcast, so we'd like to welcome you.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Well, there's a lot of things that we could talk about, and we're going to talk about as many of these things as we possibly can. First and foremost, you've been with the college just over a year, correct?
That's right.
And you are also the CTE liaison for the faculty, something else that you are very passionate about. You are also the editor of Children's Folklore Review, another thing that you are very heavily involved in, as well as you are the vice president of the Eastern American Studies Association. First question, how in the world do you find time to do all of these things?
That's a great question. There's 24 hours in the day, and I make time. Honestly, I don't know. I wish there was some secret to it. I have a very understanding partner, and I have 3 kids who take a lot of work. Well, gosh, do they take work away from me, or do they add more work? It's hard to determine. No, great faculty, great support, both at home and, of course, on college.
Awesome. So let's first start off with the Children's Folklore Review.
Okay.
How did you get involved with this initiative? Being the editor of is this a quarterly publication?
It's an annual publication.
An annual publication. But even so, I mean, I saw a copy of it. It's very, very lengthy.
Yes.
What kind of time commitment is that to be the editor of the Children's Folklore Review?
It certainly is a commitment. I started a year ago. A good friend of mine was working as the editor, and he had some medical issues that came up that meant that he could no longer carry on in that role. So he asked if I would take it over while he was recovering. And yeah, absolutely. I said, put me on. I had no idea what it would take for me to do this, but I learned very, very quickly. We were behind schedule when I took over, and had to quickly send out a call for papers, receive the papers, kind of solicit people that I knew to write something, put it together. And our last issue was really important to me. We did it in honor of a peer, a mentor of mine, Simon Bronner, who is a distinguished folklore professor at Penn State Harrisburg. And he was retiring last year, and we wanted this issue to be in honor of his research, his life. So I was able to reach out to many of his colleagues, his peers, and to previous students, and they just came forward in masses. Absolutely, something in honor of Simon Bronner. Sign me up. And so it was not challenging to get the articles for it.
One of the questions I have, and something else that I've heard recently from several students, you're currently teaching a class, Civil War history.
That's right.
One of the things that I've heard from several students is that all positive, is that you're really teaching the class in a much different way than I think that a lot of the people were anticipating.
Fair.
A lot of the things that you talk about are much more theoretical and more historical perspective. Do you care to share some insight on how maybe you're approaching this class in a bit different of a way than maybe students anticipated?
Sure. When I came in to take over this class, I was looking through the syllabus and noted that as a 300 level class on the Civil War, it wasn't what I would call rigorous. A 300 level class is something that it's not an introduction to a topic, but this is a chance to really dive deeply into the theoretical underpinnings. And so instead of watching the Ken Burns documentary on the Civil War, which is a great exercise, and I know that students were sad that I took that off, I wanted students to demonstrate the ability to think historically about the Civil War and topics about the Civil War. Now, I know I got my student evaluations back. I know that many students were not happy with it. However, many students did say that this class helped them think historically, and more importantly, to think and write critically about the past. So the way that it was organized, We did it chronologically, but we also did it thematically. So we looked at the coming of the Civil War. We looked at the issues of race, about the place of slavery, but we also looked at things like the role of women. What did women do during the Civil War, especially in the Confederacy? As the men are away, how did women respond? How were they responsible for their homes, their plantations? How did they get food on the table in times of scarcity? And so we looked at a lot of, we didn't look a lot at generals or battle strategy, but we looked more at the home front. Instead of having a textbook, students read articles written by historians, many which were published in academic journals or in scholarly books from university presses. And so the reading load was heavy, it was intellectual, and the students had to really engage with the arguments that were being made, not so much on the what happened, but understanding how historians have thought and looked at these things in the past.
I think that's really something unique that a lot of times that classes like what both you and I teach, certainly for me on occasion, I think a lot of times people come into them with preconceived notions, and it's really unfair that they're reading the course descriptions, because to put into one paragraph what we are doing over the course of 11 weeks is probably not doing it justice. And to come in and to me, I think that would be very unique to come into a class where I'm thinking, okay, I want to get a little bit of an education about the Civil War. Well, the bottom line is for many of us, many have lived in this area for a long period of time, and many of us have been to Gettysburg, and we hear all the same things. And you don't just want to rehash that, but you really want to try to make them think differently about maybe the way they interpret or look back at the Civil War and how important of an event it was, and how really tragic it was for many, and how celebrated it was for many as well. All right, here's another question that I have for you. You are no stranger to coming forward with one of the most interesting one of the most interesting events that has ever taken place in your life, and that's being on The Price is Right. Something that I didn't even really realize this, and then you did an alumni function a few months back, and that was the whole thing. Is your whole presentation centered around this trip to The Price is Right.
Yeah.
Now, while I certainly believe and understand that being on The Price is Right was a unique experience, it seemed to me that you kind of had a different interpretation of how the whole thing went. So can you tell us a little bit more background, and then talk about maybe some of the things that you spoke about at the alumni function?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was an undergraduate, and just for the record, I was an undergraduate back in 2001 to 2006 at Brigham Young University out in Utah. A group of us over spring break decided, instead of going to the beach and going to typical summer break things, that we would go down to California, and we would try to get on The Price is Right. We went down as a large group, almost 20 students, and as such, the CBS Studios was happy to give us group passes. So the day of the filming, we got there nice and early, and had the advantage of sitting next to someone who was there on their 50th anniversary, wedding anniversary, and their whole trip was to go on The Price is Right every single day. And so they were there for 5 days, had been on the show many times, and we sat and started talking to them, and they gave us some insight into what to expect when we were going on the show. This was newsworthy to me. And so they told us that before we got into the show, that the producers would ask us 3 questions. Who are you? What's your name? Where are you from? And what do you do? And that from those 3 questions, the producers would determine which contestants would come on The Price is Right, right? This isn't a drawing out of a hat. This is made for TV. They want good quality people that would make the TV worth watching. So we immediately began devising, thinking what we would say to these producers in order to get them to want us to be on the show. So my girlfriend, who is now my wife, and I, we made up these plans, and I decided that I would be, my name is Brant Ellsworth. Where are you from? I'm from Brigham Young University in Utah. And what do you do? This was a chance to stand out. So I introduced myself as the reigning Mr. BYU pageant winner, right? So I have this Mr. BYU, and that I traveled the country playing piano, which I do. I play piano, but I play piano at retirement communities. And so this image of me engaged with these senior citizens playing the piano, my thought was, man, this was something that was unique. And sure enough, when I said it, the producer started laughing, and I began thinking, this might have worked. So I was the very last contestant to be called up. I've studied it. There are 9 contestants total that are called to the front. And as the last one, the last person called up is the first person to wager. And so Bob Barker, back in the day, Bob Barker brought out a set of snowshoes, a family set of snowshoes to bid on. And I turned to Bob and I said, like, 900. And then it goes to the next person. Now, I don't know if 900 was good or bad, but the next person I knew did a bad job because they said like 1,300. And I've watched the show long enough to know that there's nothing at 1,300. So I was like, okay, 1 down, 2 to go. And the next person said 1,301. Now, there's a strategy. For those of you who've watched it, you know that you can always just say 1, or you just up the person's guess by 1 in order to take all that real estate north of it. And so it came down to the last person, I was sure, me or this girl who was standing next to me. And there was a lot of space between 0 and 900. And when she turned around to ask the audience what she should pick, I swear everybody was like, 1, 1, 1. And I did not want her to say 1. So... And I kid you not, if you watch the video, you will see me. I lean over to her and I whisper in her ear, 1302. I don't know why she did it. I don't know why I did that. I mean, I like to win, and I don't think there's anything unethical about cheating like that. But when I whispered that, I kept my fingers crossed, and sure enough, she said 1302, and I immediately began jumping because I was confident that I'd won, and sure enough, Bob Barker called that I had won.
That's incredible. So, what was the next step? Obviously, you went to the game segment of it.
Came up on stage, and I was excited. And Bob Barker says, "Brant, you look like a kid with a lot of energy. I hope you can enjoy that energy with this brand new car." And then, sure enough, the curtains open, and there it was. It wasn't all that awesome, but it was a whatever year that was, 2004 Dodge Neon SXT, the sports edition. I was like, that doesn't make it all that much better. I've seen people get really, really expensive cars, but okay, a brand new car. So I won't go into details about the game, but I'll just say that it was the game where there are 9 numbers on the board. They give you the middle number, and you have to choose the tiles that had the first 2 and the last 2 numbers. And you're given 4 guesses, and if you get it right, on the back of the card would be the front end of the car, the back end of the car. On my very last guess, I got it right. And I remember I was just guessing these random numbers, like 15, 17, 19, 95. And I remember when I had one guess left, I looked out into the audience to where all my crowd was. And there in front of them was this woman, and I kid you not, she was decked out entirely in bright, bright red. Just imagine like a jumpsuit entirely in red, a jacket in red, and she had this massive umbrero on. I'm not joking. This massive red umbrero. And she looked at me and mouthed to me. I made eye contact, 95. And I went up to her after the show and thanked her, for being my guardian angel.
So you won the car.
Won the car.
So now, what about the big wheel? We gotta go there.
Spun that big wheel. It was extremely heavy. I wish I had something exciting to say. The guy in front of me beat me. He had like 95, and I went over. I think I got a 40 and a 75, but it was that close to the right number.
A valiant effort.
Thank you.
A new car.
Yeah, and you asked earlier about the lesson. How would I use this with this alumni event? And I used it to talk a little bit about ethics in reality television. I'm a huge reality TV fan. My wife watches Bachelor religiously. I've been watching Survivor and dreaming of the chance to go on that show. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about ethics. And, are there ethics in reality games? I know in a game like Survivor, that's often the linchpin for so many contestants. You're here with 20 contestants. It's real life. You make real relationships with people. And is it okay to act unethically in order to win? I'm certainly of the opinion that absolutely you do anything you need to in order to win. And that ruffles some feathers. as was shown on my game on The Price is Right, I certainly had no problem acting semi-unethically in order to win. Some people might frown at that.
See, one of the things that I talk about in many of my classes, obviously this is something I talk about a lot, reality television. And the fact that it's called reality television is obviously just a misnomer in the first place. In fact, I'm a big reality TV show fan myself. In fact, one of my favorite shows is something like American Pickers. And a reality show like American Pickers it seems like it's reality. It seems like, hey, there's literally just a camera crew following these two guys around. And I actually read some very detailed information about how it is staged, and even when they're supposed to be freestyling, it's still, they know where they're going. It's just like any other TV show. There's a shoot schedule. And apparently, from what I understand, that they don't even drive the van across the country. Somebody else drives the van, and they get on a plane, and they meet them there, and then they just film that last little set. So it's really eye-opening. The point I'm trying to make here is that I think that a lot of people look at these shows, and it's not to say that they're uneducated about it, but really think that this is actually how people act and how people live. And I do think that it does cause some issues with the expectations we have of what goes on in society and things like that. And we talk about that all the time. On a game show type reality show, though, I think that really obviously it's fixed in a way. I mean, even something like, I'm a big fan of Hell's Kitchen with my man Gordon Ramsay. He's not picking who leaves. They already know, and maybe he has some insight. Maybe he's I think he's one of the producers or something, but it's not him. Like, he's not the one making these decisions. It's because they want drama, and if they don't have drama, it's not going to get the ratings that it needs.
Right.
So I do think that something like Survivor, which I've actually, I would love to share a book that I have that has a whole chapter about Survivor and the background of Survivor and how they select people and things like that. Might be interesting if you want to get on the show. But I really do think reality television is a huge misnomer, and that basically any reality show is really scripted just as much as any other show is. So that's very interesting. The ethics of reality TV.
Right.
Something that might be an interesting paper that you might have coming up in one of your publications. Well, I want to move on, Brant, to talk about the Humanities Film Series that's going to be coming up in 2018. Save the date for these three events. Jared Reif will be doing Jaws on January the 26th. Yours truly, Professor Paul Miller, will be doing The Big Lebowski on April the 27th. And Dr. Marcy Roven will be doing Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix on July 27th. And we still have one that's, we're looking for a date in the fall term. I have a few questions about this. Number one, obviously I'm involved with this, so I understand the amount of passion that you have about this initiative, but where was it that you came up with this idea, or maybe it was a collaborative effort?
Yeah, so my background is in American Studies. I have a master's and PhD. Actually, I have a bachelor's degree as well. And one of the things that American Studies looks at is interdisciplinary studies of the American past. And I spent a lot of time working in popular culture, and of course film became a really important part of that when I was an undergraduate. So again, I was at Brigham Young University in Utah, and some of the classes I had in film appreciation and film theory required students to attend I think then it was a weekly film series. A lot of foreign films, but I quickly grew, my appreciation for film grew as I learned to watch films not for entertainment, though they are largely for entertainment, but as windows into culture, into ideas, or into the past. And as I continued to learn more about American history, and kind of in my PhD years began focusing more on the American past, I recognized what an important role film plays in terms of educating Americans about their past. Now, very few people, for instance, were alive during the years of Martin Luther King, a class that I teach. But recently the film Selma came out, which recreated many of those events and allowed young people the chance to see visually what the 1960s looked like, and what type of issues people were fighting for. And I thought that film then could be a really interesting way for our students, who focus so much on professional skills, a chance to continuing to develop those critical thinking skills, to look at films not necessarily for entertainment purposes, but to look at them artistically and trying to understand what the producer or the director was trying to accomplish, looking at specific scenes and the use of color, the use of sound, and that we would use our humanities professors, those who have background in these topics, to share a little bit of their wisdom and their insights into these films. So that's really where it came from, a love of film, having seen this modeled at elsewhere, having done it successfully in my classes, and then just a chance for our faculty to give back in this term of a public intellectual, to give back to the students and the community at large.
One of the things that we're doing in my Communications 100 class, and I've done this several times, is we do a project. Obviously, in our lower level projects, our lower level classes, we try not to do a lot of hard research. But what I did was I had them do a film analysis of their favorite film, and there were some parameters. There were some I said, well, you might want to try something else, and I gave them several examples of some films they could do. Somebody just did Selma, by the way, a 18-year-old who really didn't know a whole lot about what had happened and really had an impact on her specifically. But one of the things that I love about this is just the idea of so many of the students are used to movie reviews. You know, they read them in the paper, they read them online, and just to get them out of that, don't tell me what the plot is. You know, most of these movies I've seen, and if not, I'm at least familiar with them. I don't need you to get up here and tell me about the plot. I want you to tell me why this movie is special, why it won the Best Picture, or why it is still revered today or was remade. Or, someone did Annie, which was very unique because I'd never really thought of that movie as a classic, especially because it's really not that old. I mean, when we think of classics, typically, we're thinking a little bit further back than Annie, but it was very poignant to her, and to see that some of these students were now understanding that film is an art, and that the canvas that a filmmaker has is much the same the canvas as an artist has, and to see some of the light switches going on about, hey, maybe there's more to film than just entertainment, is something that was very unique. So obviously, we love the fact that this is going on campus. I will always have a part of this. In fact, I will do this anytime you need me to do because. So my my love of film comes from when I was in high school, and I hope that no one thinks any less of my mom that I was sneaking in to see Quentin Tarantino movies when I was in high school, and big Coen Brothers fan. Obviously, the Coen Brothers did The Big Lebowski. Big Christopher Nolan fan as well, three auteurs of our modern generation, and I really think that there's so much more to watching film. I took like 5 film classes in my undergrad, and then we had a film class in grad school as well, and I've always just been super interested in film and specifically following my favorite directors, Tarantino, the Coen Brothers, and to this day, Christopher Nolan. So I'm very honored that I have the opportunity to chat about The Big Lebowski, which, of the 3, certainly probably the most adult-themed, we can say. But I really think that some of the things I'm going to talk about is the characters and why there are some of these adult themes and why they mean something to the movie and why it's not just, sometimes you'll watch a movie and it's, they're telling raunchy jokes just for a laugh and they don't really amount to much. There's a lot of underlying layers in this film that I really think even true fans, I have no friends that are, have seen this movie 20 times, and I think I'm going to enlighten them in very many ways, but it's definitely a good one. It's a funny one, but in comparison to the other movies, certainly a little bit more on the adult theme. So.
Right.
Now, so obviously this is an initiative that you have here at the school. Is this something that you foresee going for, every once a term for perpetuity?
I would love for that to be the case. One of the reasons I'm on the show today is because I want to get our students to attend. I think this is something that will be of benefit to them. I recognize that students have a lot on their plate, but we certainly would like for this to continue. I would love to get faculty from across the campus, from across the various disciplines, and allow this to be an opportunity for them to present to a larger audience than just their classes. So many colleges make use of this public intellectual, where there will be a forum, a symposium where faculty members can wax poetically, to use their educational, their intellectual backgrounds to talk about things that they are passionate about. And one of the things I recognized very quickly was that there were limited opportunities for faculty at Central Penn College to do that. And so this is hopefully just one of many avenues that faculty can take to give back to students and to the community. And I think that second part is really important. As Central Penn is transitioning, one of the things that we can do is give back more to the community. I feel that we have a responsibility to do that. We are not just a college that takes up land, but this is a site for the entire community. Summerdale, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the central Pennsylvania region. We have faculty members that have niches that are of value to people outside of just our little confine. So one of the things that I hope, and I know, Paul, that you've talked about this, is to make invitations, to get the word out that these faculty members are presenting on these films, on these topics, on these days, and let's see if we can't make Central Penn a larger destination for people in our community. So I hope that this is something that we launch this year. I hope it's something that students look forward to, that they schedule time. I think it's the second Friday of a term. And special thanks to the theater group for Janet Bixler for allowing us this window and reserving the theater for us. But I would love to reserve that forever, and we can just go through these different films.
Last question I have for you today, Brant. The interesting thing is you're putting all this time, effort, and energy into doing this. However, you don't have a film the first year. What was the thoughts behind that?
Oh, Paul, I was happy to do it. But I also wanted to give my peers an opportunity. I sent out a call to the Humanities and Sciences faculty at the beginning of the year, I think, saying, "Hey, this is my vision. Let's start planning now for it. Who would like to be involved? If we have 4 dates, who wants to do it?" And I kid you not, every faculty member from the Humanities and Sciences emailed me back. Absolutely. We have the deans emailing me. Absolutely, sign me up. So it wasn't that I didn't want to go. I'll certainly schedule myself for year 2, and I'll have my film.
And what film might you choose?
Oh, I'm gonna keep that one a secret.
Okay.
That's my way of saying I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, I could have went in so many different directions here. Obviously, like I said, I'm a huge Tarantino fan. We could have done there's even some more obscure movies like one like Jackie Brown or Four Rooms that a lot of people may not have seen. But I had to go with Big Lebowski. I know so many people that are big fans of the movie, and I think that the Big Lebowski has so many different layers to it that even those that have seen it are going to be interested. So, Brant, I got to tell you, thank you very much. I'm so excited. I've already been spending some of my days, even with 6 months to go, preparing for the presentation. So, and we definitely like to have you back, and we're going to have everybody that's doing one of these come down for a podcast each term. So we're really looking forward to this, Brant.
Great. Thank you, Paul, for having me come down.
My friend, it's certainly a pleasure, and we will absolutely have you back. This is an amazing initiative, and frankly, Brant, we really appreciate everything you've done for the school, from being director or liaison of the CTE for the faculty, and looking at some of your classes in a very unique way. And again, you'd mentioned earlier that it wasn't for everybody, but I think down the line, the more they think about it, they're going to remember how you look differently at a course like the American Civil War, and that's going to maybe make them think much differently about many things in history. So,
well, I know you're short on time.
No.
If I can respond to that.
Sure.
I feel very strongly that one of the skills that we need to develop in our students is the ability to think critically. I know many students take my classes. There's not a history major on campus yet. Students take my classes in order to fulfill general education requirements. And when I look at what employers are looking for in new college graduates, and it's very clear. I've done research on it. I have students in each of my classes pull up this research every year, because employers are looking for a specific skill set. And I think it's really important that in our general education classes that we are providing students with the apparatus to develop those skills. It's more than just reading. It's more than just going onto a discussion board. The ability to think critically is a muscle. It's a skill that has to be honed, and you need somebody in place to provide that training, that feedback, and to help you week after week develop those skills. It is not something that one develops overnight. And so I think the one theme that I see in all of my classes is a focus on critical thinking. Now, again, many students say that it's not for them, but it is absolutely for them. This is something that is critical to future success. And so even though you might not like it, you might not like your grade, my goal is to help you develop those skills. And that's something that I take very seriously in all of my classes.
As should we all. So, Dr. Brant Ellsworth, thank you so very much for joining the Nightly News
Great
podcast
to be here
today.
Thank you.
And we look forward to having you back, and we look forward to 2018 for the Humanities Film Series in the Capitol Blue Cross Theater.
Awesome.
All right, we'll be right back with Student Activities Director Adrienne Thoman to talk about what we have coming up on the December calendar. So we'll be right back.
Hey, this is Sai Pinthong. Thank you for listening to the Nightly News Podcast.
Welcome to the Nightly News Podcast. We are here today with Student Activities Director Adrienne Thoman for her monthly visit from the Student Activities Department, talking about Adrienne's Featured 3, plus some other very interesting events that we have coming up in December. Adrienne, welcome.
As always, I'm happy to be here.
Well, as you know, you are by far our most favorite guest that we have, and everybody's favorite segment, Adrienne's Featured 3, is going to be coming up. So, again, thank you very much for spending time with the Nightly News Podcast. We really appreciate what you've brought to our program. So a lot of big things going on. One of the things that I really wanted to start off talking about first is the Nightway, which is something that you've certainly had a hand in. I know that theater director Janet Bixler does a lot with the Nightway. Talk a little bit more about the impact that that's had on student involvement.
Well, I see it from two sides. First of all, I love that the Nightway itself is a way to pull students in and get them engaged. Students that maybe weren't involved before are being pulled in to stand in front of that green screen. They're engaged.
Green screen?
Yes, they'd use a green screen and have all these great graphics, and it's really, really cool to see them kind of take that risk and try this new thing. So that is one side of it that I'm super excited about. The other part of it is that we get to then see these amazing pieces that the students create, promoting upcoming student activities and events that are happening. And they're on campus. So I'm sitting in my office in the underground, and I get to hear, I hear Sophia or Brian or whoever is doing the set. I get to hear them making these announcements, and it's incredible. I know other students get to listen to them too, to find out what's happening here at Central Penn.
I think one of the things that's happened over the past, probably year and a half, is that we've really made it an initiative here on campus to make sure that the students have an idea about what is going on, whether it's just listening to the podcast, whether it's watching the Nightway, whether it's watching your Facebook page, the Student Activities Facebook page. Please make sure you like that page today. Shameless plug. But really what we're trying to do is, obviously, look, we know that you put in a lot of effort to fill up this calendar. The students here cannot absolutely at all complain that there's nothing to do here, and now they're a little bit more knowledgeable. Since some of these initiatives have started, have you seen involvement start to rise a little bit?
I feel like we definitely have seen more awareness. We know just from our perspectives how difficult it is, not just on campus, but in life in general. There are flyers everywhere, there's commercials everywhere, there's posters, and it's really hard to hit those different locations to make sure that people are finding out about things. This has been a great way to do it.
Yeah, information overload is real. And really, it's just making sure that everybody knows where to go to find this information. So, obviously, the December calendar should be released by the time you're hearing this podcast, and you can look up all the things that we're going to talk about today. So obviously we have Adrienne's Featured 3 coming up, but one thing I really wanted to start off this conversation with today is a very interesting event that you have coming up on December the 12th, the SGA Student Leadership Training, The Color Code with Miss Una Martone. Can you tell us a little bit about what this training is and maybe why students should consider signing up for this event?
So let me first say that our Student Government Association, one thing that they really wanted to bring was opportunities not just for student government, but for all of our student leaders in clubs and beyond, because I know that student leadership goes beyond our student clubs. This is going to be open to everybody. Give them opportunities to build their leadership skills. I am a board member on Leadership Harrisburg Area's board, where I met Una Martone, and she's their executive director and does this color code training. It's incredible. It takes you back to your primary, you have to think back to, I have to think a little bit longer than some of our students will, but think back to when you were young and what your primary
Adrienne, you're
drives
like
were.
27.
And that's why I like you, Paul. So you think back to your primary drives, and then it matches you with one of 4 colors. And the training will, first of all, take the assessment to determine what color you are, and then talk a little bit about how you interact with the different colors. I know what my color is because I already took it, and I'm not going to tell anybody until we get to the training. It's going to be top secret. People always guess me wrong, though.
Well, so what is the program actually about? What are some of the skills that students will learn in this opportunity with the color code with Una Martone?
Well, I think it's important to know when you're working with others. My particular color gives me a particular perspective. So if I know, Paul, I know what color you are, you know what color I am, well, then we can kind of go from there, and I think it helps us to work better together. So I expect this and anticipate that this will be a good opportunity for our students to learn how to work well in groups, how to work well with their team projects, with their classmates, and eventually when they're in the working world.
One of the things that I've noticed, I'm teaching an online section of Intro to Human Communication, and something that I tried it last term for the first time and doing it again this term, is in an online class, I'm doing a group project. People hate group projects. Hate them. Anytime I'm in class and I bring up anything about a group project, people are upset. Now, one of the main reasons that is because more than likely in the past they had to do a group project where someone in the group did not pull their own weight and they had to pick up the slack. And every time I get that response, you know what I say to them, Adrienne?
What?
Welcome to the real world. Because when you work in groups, sometimes you are the person who picks up the slack, and sometimes people will pick up the slack for you. And it goes both ways, and that's just how working in teams often is. And so the point I try to make here is in my intro to it, we're talking small group communication, right? So of course I'm going to do some type of assignment like that, and I've already had such amazing feedback from this. And it was just putting a paper together, something interesting that about career services and our career services department. But I get a lot of positive feedback on my student observation surveys. I had several people say last term, I really thought I was going to hate this, but it actually was really easy, and it really teaches them about some of the dynamics that we are discussing in class that week. One of the things I really hope that not only just people in the nightly news that I'm the advisor of, but people all around campus utilize clubs so they can work effectively in groups. Because, Adrienne, conservatively, how many different groups are you in on this campus? Whether it's a club that you're an advisor of, whether it's some of the different people that maybe you help out, like I know that you're an advisor of the SGA. Think of different committees that you're on. 10 or 15 different groups maybe?
Yeah, probably.
I would say I'm in at least that many. So, most of the work that we're going to do and it's not just in what we do, it's anytime. There's always going to be groups that are involved, and you have to start embracing working together with other people. That's why I think something like this is excellent as far as developing leadership.
Mm-hmm. Well, and nothing happens in a silo. Nothing.
No.
You're not going to go to any working environment and make decisions solely on your own. You're always engaging with others. So the ability to effectively communicate with other people and to work together, it's key.
One of the big things that I always talk about when we're trying to develop people's resumes is leadership is one of those things that people in the job market want to see. If they're hiring somebody and they're bringing you in for an interview, they want to see what leadership opportunities that you've taken advantage of. I think this is a perfect one.
And this is a very high caliber training. The training that we're offering to our students now, it's something that has been done with members of our faculty and staff. It's been done with community leaders. It's not just, some little thing that we put together. This is a quality program that our students are able to take advantage of, as well as our club advisors. And if there are any faculty and staff that really feel passionately about it, I bet we can squeak them in too.
So what we're talking about is the SGA student leadership training called the Color Code with Una Martone from Leadership Harrisburg. That's going to happen on Tuesday, December 12th in ATEC 202 from 2 to 5 p.m. You must pre-register with Adrienne by emailing Adrienne Thoman at centralpenn.edu. Adrienne, one final thing I want to talk about before we move on to everybody's favorite segment, Adrienne's Featured 3. I would like to talk about the SGA elections that just took place.
Absolutely.
Obviously, we know that Morgan Littleford was crowned SGA president. She will take over starting in 2018. I know we're all very sorry that Yulie will no longer be our SGA president, but obviously Yuli is about to graduate herself. So now tell me a little bit more about, are you pleased with the way that things went with the SGA election, or maybe you learned some things that you'll do in the future?
So I think everything we do in student activities and everywhere is an opportunity to continue to improve. So there are definitely things that I'm proud of. I love that we were able to have a competitive presidential race. That hasn't always been the case. And we were able to have two quality candidates. They had to have a debate. They had to give a speech. That was exciting to me. I really appreciated that opportunity. And I think it's great to make student government credible and visible and all of those things. I do wish we would have had more student turnout. We didn't get quite as many votes as I would have liked to, but I think every year we'll continue to push and get that number higher.
I just had two comments. One of the things, when Kendra Elliott was on, I believe episode 35, she said that the SGA went away for quite some time just because there wasn't the amount of interest there that was needed. I really don't think that that's the case anymore. I'm so happy to see that we've got several very dedicated students. Mm-hmm. And honestly, one of the things that any student out there has to understand, please go with any issues that you have to your SGA president. They have a direct pipeline opportunity that they can sit down with our co-presidents, Richard Varmecki and Dr. Linda Fedrizzi-Williams. They meet with them very frequently. And they have, it's not like, this does not happen frequently at other schools, the SGA president sitting down with the president of the college. I mean, the ability for us to be able to, I don't want to say us as students, but the ability for students to discuss issues that they're having with their SGA president and actually have something getting done. I mean, I can foresee big things for the SGA.
Absolutely. And I've been able to be in those meetings and see the interactions. And I'm just our co-presidents, they are asking for their students' input. What is the pulse of the campus? What are the students saying? What are they feeling? So please, I'm going to just reiterate what you said. If there are thoughts and concerns about your experience here at Central Penn, please talk to your student government. They are a beeline right to that, right to our co-presidents, which is pretty cool.
And what I also thought was very unique was the kickoff program that you did. That gave a chance for everybody who was running for office to speak their mind and to discuss some of the initiatives that they had and why it was important for them to be in SGA. So I thought that was something that was very unique. They'll all be serving a one-year term, correct?
Yes, 1 year.
And so then would you imagine that this type of election kickoff is going to be something that we see in the future?
Oh, I hope so. I like that we get to put a little heat on the competitors.
I thought that was very unique, and I thought that they all did a wonderful job. They were all very prepared, very professional, and I was so happy to see that it was, certainly competitive for the presidential race. There's no question about it. So I really give you a lot of credit for putting that together, and thank you very much for continuing this legacy of our SGA here at the college.
And I'm going to give a shout out to Yuli and our current officers for the hard work that they did. All those initiatives, running the elections and getting them set up, the program that you saw that had all of the candidates give their speeches, that was all. They put all that hard work and time into that, so shout out to all of them.
Well, trust me, we at the Nightly News are going to be very sad when Yuli leaves, but of course, again, she's going to be doing bigger and better things, and that's really the whole goal of what we're here to do, is to be here with them and enjoy their time while they're here, and then send them off to fulfill their wildest dreams.
Absolutely.
So. Okay, Adrienne, everyone's favorite segment, Adrienne's Featured 3 is coming up.
I love that I get to be everyone's favorite segment. That makes me happy.
Well, I'm glad. I mean, that's we really appreciate this, and I know I tell you that every time, but we really sincerely appreciate the outreach that you're doing in the activities department. So, okay, Adrienne, what is the first event on Adrienne's Featured 3?
Okay, so we talked about it a little already, but number 1 is going to be the SGA Student Leadership Training, the Color Code. It's worth it. Don't miss it. It's free. So it's being sponsored by Student Government Associations. So take advantage of it. It's going to be Tuesday, December the 12th from 2 to 5. We do ask that you commit to that entire time frame because you'll need to be there for the assessment and grading the assessment and then the training after that. So please plan to be there for the duration, but it will be well worth it.
And also, please, if you're interested, please reach out to Adrienne by emailing at adriennethoman@centralpenn.edu. I will also put her email and more information about that along with this podcast. Adrienne, what is the second event in Adrienne's Featured 3?
Well, it wouldn't feel right if I did not bring up this week 10 tradition of late night breakfast. You know it's always going to happen. I love it. We stay up late. I know you're cramming for your finals, but we're going to have some pancakes and some breakfast ready for you on Thursday, December the 14th. So just to make it a little bit more fun, a little bit more special, our activities advisory board, they're actually going to facilitate a game night while you're there eating your breakfast, just to give you a little stress relief and fun and make it a fun night for you guys.
What types of games are they going to break out?
Well, I hear there's, obviously it's all up to the masterminds in AAB. So I believe there's going to be Pity Pat and Jenga, and there's another card game, but I forget what it's called.
I'm an apples to apples fan myself.
I love apples to apples. I'm not quite sure what we'll see, but there'll be lots of fun opportunities for you to get involved.
I think we're actually going to get that out tomorrow, probably. All right, Adrienne. So we got late night breakfast Thursday, December 14th from 10 to 11:30 p.m. That's in the Night and Day Cafe with a special game night from the Activities Advisory Board. All right, Adrienne. Event number 3.
All right, number 3. It's the end of the term. It's right before finals, and we are going to do our overnight event in the underground called the Cram Jam. So it's going to start Sunday, December the 17th at 7 p.m. It actually goes overnight until 5 a.m. You'll see me there with my box of Joe from Dunkin' trying to stay awake. It's actually going to be a collaborative event between our Student Government Association and our Activities Advisory Board. They're still planning the lineup of activities, but typically there's not going to be a midnight movie. Our Central Penn players are going to do some improv games, which we've had them come before. It's super, super fun. And then usually a craft and some competitive games and all kinds of activities and food.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the last Cram Jam the one that you said you had the most people stay awake for the entire event?
I think it was.
How many people did you have again?
Oh my goodness. Was it close to 20? I think it was close to 20 to make it the entire time, that's pretty good.
I couldn't do it, and I'll tell you what, that was one thing that I used to be good at, is staying up late. Well, now if I'm awake past 10 o'clock, there's something crazy going on because, I get up pretty early. I couldn't do it anymore, Adrienne. I not to say that I've tried recently, but boy, I don't know how you do it. More power to you.
It's the Dunkin'. It's definitely the Dunkin'.
Maybe we should call them for some underwriting. All right, Adrienne's featured 3 events for the month of December. Tuesday, December the 12th, the Color Code with Una Martone. Please pre-register with Adrienne. Thursday, December 14th, the Late Night Breakfast and Game Night. That'll be from 10 to 11:30 in the Night and Day Cafe. And, of course, the Every Term Tradition Cram Jam, December 17th from 7 p.m. till 5 a.m. on December the 18th. One final thing that I wanted to mention, because this will be the last time that you'll be in this term, Adrienne. This is actually our last podcast of the term, so we'll be back at the beginning of next year. I just wanted to remind everybody very quickly that coming up in the winter term, the Education Foundation Scholarship will be open, and something that I almost don't even recommend is not strong enough of a word. I demand that if you're out there listening that you do this. I'm very involved with the Education Foundation, and I think something that a lot of my students didn't realize is that when we wear jeans on Wednesday, that means that we're literally having money deducted from our paycheck and go right into the Education Foundation for scholarships for our students. And I think
got my jeans on today.
So do I.
It's a Wednesday when we're recording this.
So, and that's the thing, is I really think that our students should really consider themselves lucky that we have so many people who are so dedicated to their well-being and to their education. So please, if you're listening to this, please make a note in your calendar that when you come back for winter term, that this will be open. Certainly myself, Adrienne, and many, many other people on this campus will be happy to help you.
Shout out to the Writing Center.
The Writing Center, absolutely. So you've got many different options. If you need any help with your Scholarship Education Foundation letter or essay that you're writing, please contact us, or certainly contact the Learning Center in ATEC. So, Adrienne, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, as always. Thank you.
And I believe you'll be our next guest on our next podcast, because we'll be back at the beginning of January. So.
Well, Happy New Year.
And well, Happy New Year to you, and good luck during Cram Jam, staying up all night.
I may need it.
All right. Well, for Student Activities Director Adrienne Thoman, this is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll catch you next time on the Nightly News Podcast.